Okay, and so here we are ready to do the last of the follow along notes. So let me grab this screen for you guys so that you don't have to, actually I'm just gonna, you don't need to see my face for this because you have this in front of you. I'm gonna see, is that better? Probably. I'm gonna autofocus here, and that didn't really work. As you can see, this is the protein synthesis translation sheet with initiation in the first 3 squares, elongation, and then on the back page, terminate the, elongation here, and then termination here and here. I guess I have to back off just a little bit. There we go. Autofocus again. That's a little better. I went ahead and pre-colored so you didn't have to watch me color. Everything that was the same thing got the same color throughout the whole thing. I have it on 2 separate sheets just to make my life easier because things might bleed through, but you might want to use colored pencils, not markers, on your sheet. Having said that, we're going to walk through the steps of protein synthesis translation through initiation, elongation, and termination. Please remember that initiation, elongation, and termination are also the words you would use for transcription and even replication as well. But in protein synthesis, they make that very, very certain. So the very first step that happens in initiation, either out in the cytosol or at the rough endoplasmic reticulum, is that an mRNA binds to a small, that's supposed to be an S, ribosomal subunit. That is the first step of initiation. mRNA binds to a small ribosomal subunit. That's what happens there. So we have our mRNA, the single-stranded mRNA with A and U and G and C. And the small ribosomal subunit binds at the 5' cap. The 5' cap is the flag of like, hi, we're here, ready to work. And then of course the AUG is that methionine start codon. So those are both signals to the small ribosomal subunit to bind. Along comes an initiator tRNA. We know that the initiator tRNA is carrying methionine. Its anticodon is UAC for that codon UAG. I'm even going to write the word anticodon and codon there. So codon is on the mRNA, anticodon is on the tRNA. So initiator tRNA anticodon, base pairs with the first codon, and of course, as we know, it's the start codon on mRNA. True story, brah. That's what happens. As I've stated, first amino acid, which I'm just going to abbreviate AA for amino acid, is methionine. Perfect. So that initiator codon binds. When that initiator codon binds, that is the flag for the large ribosomal subunit to come along and get this party started. So this is all initiation. So small ribosomal subunit binds to mRNA, that tRNA with that methionine comes in, and when that happens, the large ribosomal subunit binds to the complex. Good. When the binding happens, now this ribosome and this whole entire worksheet is only showing you the A, I'm gonna write that up here, and the P sites, but don't forget there is an E site known as the exit site. So the initiator tRNA is located at the P site. P means, for you who just need to know, you're not ever going to be asked this on a test, or not on my test. Peptidyl tRNA binding site. So protein and tRNA. A site is amino acyl. So amino acid and tRNA binding site. So I went a little bit beyond the box there. So the amino acyl tRNA is the tRNA that's just carrying the amino acid. The peptidyl tRNA is going to be the tRNA that is holding the growing peptide chain. Okay, I'm going to give you all a moment to write that down. mRNA binds to a small ribosomal subunit. The initiator tRNA anticodon base pairs with the first codon, also known as the start codon, on mRNA. That first amino acid is methionine. It's always methionine. It should never not be methionine. If it's not methionine, that's a mutation. That signals the large ribosomal subunit to bind to the complex. This is kind of like different steps here. The initiator tRNA is then located at the P site, P being the peptidyl tRNA binding site. And now we need another tRNA carrying another amino acid to enter the amino acyl tRNA binding site. If you are not at this point, you need to pause because I'm going to move on. So our first step of elongation, it's a big old box. It's only one sentence. It's going to state what's happening here, which is that a second tRNA anticodon base pairs with the second codon on the mRNA at the A site. And it should be noted that as the chain grows and the ribosome, the large ribosome, well, actually the whole ribosome, they actually have to shift down to every codon. So the ribosome is going to move along the mRNA so that we don't have repeating anticodon base pairings at the same spot, because you always want to make it the next three letters for that triplet language that the amino acids used to build. Well, actually, it's that the tRNA is used to build the protein. So the second tRNA anticodon comes in base pairs with that second codon on the mRNA at the A site. Okay. We're in elongation now. This is past initiation. Good. This is going to be a bit. We're going to talk about a lot in this little box. Okay. So after that second codon comes in and binds at the A site, here's what happens. Peptidyltransferase, so an enzyme, okay, that's an enzyme because ACE means enzymes, forms a peptide bond between, and I'm going to abbreviate that B/W, the first, gotta get off that, first and second amino acids. This is depicted in my picture with this blank box, this little square box in between the two. This right here is the peptide bond. Sorry that I covered up the words for a second. So peptidyltransferase forms a peptide bond between the first and second amino acids. Then the first tRNA exits because it's empty. It doesn't need to be there anymore. The mRNA, actually the ribosome, but that's fine. The mRNA shifts position by 1 codon. Okay, so the AUG that coded for that methionine is now out of the P site. The P site is now holding the methionine and the next amino acid that came in, and the A site is now ready for a new tRNA amino acid complex. Which, okay, so the second tRNA now at P site. Okay, and then a third tRNA anticodon pairs with, I'm going to abbreviate that with a W slash, that's how I do things, with the third codon on mRNA. And this process just repeats and repeats and repeats. This third codon will bind, peptidyltransferase will form a peptide bond between the two, the codon will shift down. The CGA tRNA will leave, the AAA tRNA will now be in the second site, and a new amino acyl tRNA complex will come into the A site. Peptide bond will form, everything shifts. New amino acid, peptide bond will form, everything shifts. For hundreds to thousands of codons. So, process continues until a stop, remember there's 3 stop codons, codon reaches the A site. Remember, there is only 1 start codon, AUG, methionine. That's it. That's all. Excuse me. But there are 3 stop codons. So we move along, and termination happens. Now termination, if you wanted to give it like a summary, termination is stop codon reached and polypeptide released. So that would be a summary of what termination stands for. But what really happens is when we hit a stop codon, so our codon here is UGA. That doesn't code for an anticodon. And that automatically causes a release factor, which in here is just a globular protein. So this is our release factor. That causes that to enter the A site. So, okay, let me just write that down. Stop codon, which the 3 stop codons we have are UGA, UAA, and UAG, reaches the A site. All right. That automatically causes a release factor binds to the stop codon. Excellent. This forces, I don't think forces is the right word, but the next step, what this does is the polypeptide the polypeptide is hydrolyzed, so water is utilized, from the tRNA at the P site. Good. We've reached a stop codon, a release factor comes in. Now the polypeptide is disassociated from the rest of the complex through hydrolysis. The second that happens, the whole complex disassembles. The mRNA goes on its happy way, the small ribosomal subunit goes off, and the large ribosomal subunit. That doesn't mean that these two won't immediately bind again to another mRNA, but it has to completely disassociate to start over again. Words. Dissociates, there we go. Another word for that is disassembles. Okay, so it disassociates, disassembles. The mRNA can be used again. It can be used until something comes along to degrade that mRNA, and the polypeptide is released. It is important to note that the polypeptide has not stayed in the primary chain form, but as it is coming out of the ribosome, it is automatically binding into those alpha helices and beta pleated sheets, and then forming those tertiary bonds with the disulfide bridges and covalent bonds between amino acids and forming the final globular protein shape. So it is important that you know that. The whole reason it has to disassociate is so it can rebuild with another mRNA and another initiator codon. Okay, because we need that initiator codon to say start. That is it. That is the end of the follow along notes for transcription and translation. I hope that was fairly clear to all of you. Thank you.